All right, everybody, let's dive right in, okay? So first off, you probably saw the email from Gina talking about being able to make sure that we're here, we're done for the week in regards to at least as much building as possible. So if you notice anything, like so this morning I noticed that the light switch underneath this doesn't turn on anymore. So if you notice anything, mention it to her like today. If not, they're going to be harder to get. They're going to be on to the next project. Okay. All right. So a lot of you are familiar with this concept, rent versus own. So what I want to do is dive in and be able to give you some different kind of sales concepts. Top 10 is what we're gonna go for here. And so any that you want to chime in, feel free. So I also attached in the email last Friday was this kind of like little graphics, if you will, to kind of help share some of the ideas here. So one of the ones right now is, am I gonna have to do this every single time? Might have to. So anyone that wants to be, I can show you how to use this here a little bit later. Let me know. So when it comes to renting versus owning, think of this like when you're talking to someone and they've never had a conversation with life insurance, or they just have no concept for it, even though they might have bought it, right? So rent versus own is this concept of if you have life insurance, you ultimately want coverage. And so depending on your income is going to determine whether you decide to buy it and own it or to buy it and rent it. So think of it from the perspective of renting a house versus owning the house. So for example, Jason, why would you decide to own your own house?
Have equity growth.
Okay, so you want to own it, right,
Yeah.
for equity.
Mm-hmm.
So the term for that one in life insurance would be cash value. So I want to be able to make sure that the premiums that I'm putting in have value. Just like when I pay a mortgage, I want some of that to go towards the actual equity in my house. Now, the reality though is that when I rent a house and I walk away after renting, what do I have to show for it?
Nothing.
Nothing. But that entire time that I stayed there, I had protection. And so when it comes to life insurance, renting versus owning, this is similar to renting would be that of term. It's going to give you the coverage that you need in a certain period of time. It's typically going to be the lowest cost version. But at some point, that lease is going to expire. Same thing when it comes to term. So what are some of the common term durations?
10, 15, 20.
10, 15, 20, 30. I've seen the occasional 40 for those in their 20s. Not super common, but sometimes you can find that out. And then, of course, on the permanent side, we have whole life, we have universal life, guaranteed universal, index universal, variable universal. The term is pretty much, that's what it is, okay? So when do you think it's appropriate to have term insurance?
You're young and just starting your career.
Just young, starting the career? What else would be a good time?
Children.
Children? What do you mean? To put it on a kid or?
No, if you just had a kid.
Okay, if you had a kid, you can maybe put it on a child.
Just got into an investment?
Just got into investment, right? And so maybe you took out a loan from a bank and, hey, I got a 10-year note on this thing, want to make sure that it doesn't pass on. I might have put up some personal collateral in order to make that happen. Where else do you think term could find a good house?
Same thing as Candy, like a mortgage.
Could be a mortgage,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes they used to call it mortgage insurance where the death benefit would slowly decrease. However, what you find a lot of times from a cost standpoint, there's no value in having a decreasing death benefit just based on cost. And number two is most people don't actually get their mortgage for 30 years and pay it all the way to its entirety. Most people will take their mortgage and at some point refinance, or they'll pay it off earlier. So there's very few Americans that actually take that duration of mortgage and live for it for the entire time. They end up selling their house as well. Any other reasons why you think term would be valuable to utilize in your personal or business life?
Us.
And
Go right ahead, Kenny.
I was gonna say, man insurance?
Key man.
No, key person, yeah, absolutely. So hey, if Jason leaves, he's generating 50% of the revenue for the firm. If he were to pass away, I want to make sure that I'd be able to replace him and his lost revenue. I could definitely do that with term. I think someone else was trying to chime in there. Was that you, Mike, or Casey?
Yeah, it's good. It's good when you're looking at estate planning for if anything happens while there's still an estate tax issue.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say high net worth person that worked $80 million. If anything happened while they're still young, there's a massive estate tax right there. So you put a term line to mitigate that out.
Yep, absolutely.
While they're still young, because they're helping when they're older. It's a different situation.
I love it. So on that, the next one that comes to mind where term can be really helpful is guaranteeing your insurability. So this dovetails into concept number 2. And so with that, what is your insurability? Your ability to work? What else would be your insurability, guys? It's your health, right? And also your lifestyle. So let's say, for example, David decides, I want to become an instructor on the weekends scuba diving. Or I want to be able to teach people how to hang glide and skydive. The problem with that lifestyle choice, you can still go and do it, it's just that life insurance is probably going to say, you know what, because that hobby is such a big factor of your weekends, we're going to insure you, but we're going to charge you. Okay? Now you decide to no longer do those activities, then we'll pull it away from you. Because even if you're a professional at being a scuba diver, you can still get the benefits. You can still have a likelihood of death. And even if you're an expert about skydiving and hang gliding, wind you can't control, right? So acts of God, basically from a lifestyle perspective, become an issue. Or let's say, for example, Jason decides to go to Colorado for the weekend. There it's open cannabis season, and he decides to participate. But if he has $2 million of life insurance already bought, he already guarantees his insurability going with that he bought it. Okay, so you see this very commonly. I've had parents buy it for their kids before they go to college, because a lot of times when you go to the sorority or fraternity or the weekend, you might smoke. Okay, what you smoke is again a choice of what happens in college. But a lot of times, what that's in regards to that smoking is it'll basically double your cost of insurance, right? So I knew quite a number of parents would actually buy $100,000, $200,000, $250,000, just minimal amount of term for their kids. It's like $8 a month. It's ridiculously low, and then it allowed them to have that non-smoker good health rating that the parents knew that they had while they're living at their house. Okay.
There's a situation we came across. When me and Bobby was with parents, we heard in the office that Nets jersey. We had just finished his life insurance, and then he got traded. And during his trade, they did a physical. Literally, just signed like a week before. Just signed his policy, just paid. Got traded to Houston, to trade to the Pacers, and then in his physical, they found that he had a tumor on his kidney, cancerous, and he wouldn't have been insurable after that. But we had literally just locked in a term the week before.
That is amazing, right? So guarantee that insurability. So this could be, I'm sitting down with someone, husband and wife, and they, at some point they tell me, I want to have kids in the future. So right now we're both working professionals. Our need for life insurance isn't that big of a deal. We got married a year ago. Of course, I'd be devastated if she were to pass away. You'd be devastated if he passed away. But in that scenario, there isn't this massive financial desire, because that person can kind of be on their own, right? Because they're working. But if we have a desire, though, to have this larger family, and maybe one of us decide to pull back and be a full-time caregiver of the children and raising them, then having a lot of life insurance now while we're healthy and young makes sense today, because we're young and healthy, versus who knows what it looks like 10 or 20 years from now, okay? Or maybe 5 years, whenever they decide to have children, Okay? So that is concept number 2, in guaranteeing your insurability. So remember, when you apply for life insurance, you're guaranteeing a certain amount of coverage, and that's going to be determined by your health, your lifestyle, and of course, your financial ability. So this is great for our young single folks and our newly dual income, no kids situation. Okay? So health, lifestyle, and we can call it non-smoking. The last one of guaranteeing your insurability, where this could be helpful, is eventually I want to convert some into the future. Right now, financially, I can't afford $2 million of permanent, but I want to eventually have that. So buy the $2 million of term and then convert it over time. Because what you're guaranteeing then is my insurability right now. To Mike's point, someone all of a sudden they get diagnosed with cancer, and now all of a sudden that becomes completely off the table. They are uninsurable. Okay, so we knocked that one out. So let's go here to the goose that lays the golden eggs. Okay, and we can do this again. Here we go. So here is the goose that lays the golden eggs, okay? So the idea here is, number one, is when it comes to long-term disability, disability is the worst word to use. And I'll use this as an example. So when I say the word disabled, what images come to your mind? Lieutenant Dan with his titanium legs, right? What else comes to your mind? Disabled.
Wheelchair.
The wheelchair, okay? And the reason why that's so emblazed in our minds is because there's not a parking lot in the United States that doesn't have the blue and white wheelchair, right? But we know that most of those people that have a disability isn't because they're coming out of a wheelchair in a modified car. Most of our disabilities that we're not even aware of. Mental things, physical things that might manifest themselves not on a daily basis, like Lieutenant Dan, who lost his legs in the war. So when it comes to this scenario, a lot of people are familiar with this nursery story, right? Where there was a farmer and he had a goose, and one day he woke up and went to go grab the eggs from the goose to cook them up, I guess, because goose eggs are delicious. And lo and behold, it's this golden egg. Now he thinks one of his neighbors might have played a prank on him. He decides to go to the nearby town, take it to a jeweler. Jeweler's like, no, this is solid gold. He says, this is amazing. Will you buy it from me? Absolutely, I will. It's a solid gold egg. I can do a lot with this. And so the farmer eventually gets wealthy because he has all these eggs. So how does this nursery rhyme or nursery story then relate to us and our business? It is from the perspective of, if we have the ability to insure something, do we insure the goose or the golden eggs? Which one would you guys insure? Insure the goose that it can continue to lay golden eggs, or the golden eggs?
The goose.
The goose. And why?
Because it can keep making eggs.
Because it can keep making eggs. Okay? So in this scenario, every single one of you is the goose. But yet every single one of us has insured a car, legally if you legally insured your car, or your house, or you might even have an umbrella if you have a good P&C agent. You might even insured your jewelry, right? Or a boat. But very few people actually insure the goose. So so that is the question to ask the client, if you decide to have this kind of fairy tale story with them. Now, I would say for most people, this is if you're a storyteller. If you are not a storyteller, you do not want to share the goose that lays golden eggs. If you're more analytical, it might be, okay, so how much money do you earn? You earn $500,000. You are 35 years old. When do you think you'll retire and stop working for income? Age 65, okay? So that means you're gonna work for 30 years. Simple math, 500,000 times, and let's assume no increase. 500,000 times 30 years, what does that equate to, folks? $15 million. Now, just so you're aware, you do put about, if you put about 3% inflation, who knows what the rule of 72 is?
That's how long it takes money to double based on interest.
Okay, so say that slowly, Jason, so people can
That's how
understand
long
what
it
you said.
takes your money to double based on the rate of return. So
Okay.
if it's 7%, it takes 10 years, or 7.2% takes
Yep.
10 years.
So in this scenario, if you get a 3% raise, which is the average inflation rate, that 15 million is equivalent to 25 million. Okay? So that income earner, or that doctor, that attorney that's 35 making $500,000 is gonna earn 15 to $25 million over their lifetime. Now it's not linear, but still that's the idea here. And so if they got sick or injured, are they taking care of that biggest risk, right? So statistically speaking, there is not a time in your life where you're more likely to die than you are to get sick and injured. So in other words, my grandfather, who's gonna be 92 next month, and he's got heart failure and dementia, he's more likely to get sick and injured than he is to die, right? And he's got these health ailments. And that's the reality for every single one of us. Now, when you're David's age and Jason's age, you are about 1 in 4, and you're 4 times more likely to get sick and injured than you are to die. And death is 100% likely to happen, guys. Hate to be the bearer of bad news on this Monday morning, but that is a harsh reality. Everyone will die. But in our lifetime, there's not a point where getting sick and injured is ever lower than that guaranteed likelihood of death. Okay? What I find is this is probably one of the biggest risks out there that very few people are talking about. One, because it's complicated, and number 2 is because everyone makes the assumption that they got something through work. And the majority of people, the majority of places out there, don't have anything offered through their work. Okay? Yeah. So when you're talking with someone, they might say they have something through work. Well, what is it? What's it look like? What's it giving you? Right? I remember sitting down with an attorney. She was pulling in $120,000 a year. She got, I got coverage through work. I'm like, great. Find out what it is. It's like, oh, I think it's 60% or 66 2/3 of my income, and that's part of the package. And I said, well, is there a cap? She goes, I don't know. And I said, you want to find that out. Cap was 3,000. Okay? If she got sick and injured, that paltry 66 2/3 was not even close. It was half that for her. She would only get $3,000. It was capped out. So for her, it sounded like a really good program explained in the employment handbook, but for her and her circumstances, it was a 30% benefit. And it was going to be taxed because the employer worked on it, paid for it, deducted it off of their payroll taxes, their payroll deductions, and expenses. So in this scenario, when you can ask someone, and again, you're comfortable telling the story, which would you insure, you have to ask them why. And get them to articulate, this is why. Because the moment that you can get them to verbalize out loud that the goose is what drives everything, it's what earns the income, and then you turn around and say, the goose is you, how much have you insured? They have no idea how to answer. Okay. Now, again, there's more complex, high net worth. I know Mike's done a lot with athletes when those that are compensated very highly. So I'd say get with him if you want to kind of get into some more sophisticated. But I'd say for the average person out there that's not, earning $5 million over, a 10-year contract or something, is being able to ensure their ability to continue that stream of income. Okay. All right. So that is the goose that lays the golden eggs. Let's see here. All right, renting versus owning, goose versus the golden egg, long-term care. So let's go here. Let me just, audience participation here. What do you guys know about long-term care insurance? Tell me about it. What does it cover?
Living expenses.
It covers,
Go Mike.
it covers either paying for someone to come to your home to take care of you, or a facility,
Okay.
or going to a facility, or having a caretaker at home, like your child will take care of you, or a husband, or somebody. So either have a nurse come into the house every day, pay for someone in the family to, or be in a facility full time.
Yes. What were you gonna say, David?
Yeah, so my grandparents actually have one because my grandfather is considered 100% disabled. He's a veteran. So they have a provider come in, and that's under the long-term care plan VA provided to them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's good. Not a lot of people get that to
Yeah,
the VA, by the
yeah.
way. It's a
yeah.
long waiting list. So to Mike and David's point, so this is to provide coverage in the event that you get sick and injured and need help with what's considered your activities of daily living. Now there's 6 of them. Which ones do you guys remember? Which ones are the activities?
Oh, so
Bathing, dressing, eating, moving, toileting, incontinence.
yeah,
Yep,
you
eating,
can't eat by
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Transferring.
And it's
So
like
like
any
any
kind of,
test.
they transport you also to any kind of appointment that you might have.
Yep. So think of it like this. It's all the activities that you and I do before we leave the house. So it's the ability to transfer yourself from a bed to the bathroom, or to get yourself to eat, or to bathe yourself, or to have the
Don't
ability
actually
to
use the
hold,
bathroom.
right? So toileting is what's using the bathroom. Continence is holding the bathroom, right?
Is that occupational therapy? You know what that is?
It could fall under occupational therapy, but this is what qualifies for a long-term care policy to actually pay out. You need 2 of those activities that you need assistance with. Now remember, these are things that are chronic versus acute. Acute meaning it's just, I broke my leg, eventually it's gonna heal, and I'm on my way. Chronic means I'm totally disabled through the VA standards, and it's never gonna get better, right? So in this, it does cover at home care, at a facility, at a nursing home, at a assisted living facility, and a lot of them even have the caveat of, if there's a different facility that comes created in the future, we will also cover for that. Now to Mike's point, this can help for informal care, which they consider to be a child. So a lot of policies though, in today's world, have like a cash option, where because there is a lot of family that take care of this individual, they will cover. Now, in order to qualify, you need help with 2 of those activities of daily living. It's also typically then some kind of reimbursement. If you're receiving care at home, you might get a percentage smaller than your total monthly benefit. Okay. Now there's a portion of this similar to that in disability. This one's called an elimination period. What is that?
It's the amount of time you have to wait before you after getting sick or hurt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So there needs to be at least 90 days, most commonly applied in long-term care, and also, by the way, in long-term disability, right?
Yeah.
I get sick and injured, it's going to I'm gonna have to spend my own hard-earned cash for this therapist, for this physician, not physician, a nurse, a phlebotomist, medical assistant, before they start paying out. Okay? Now, the reason this is such a high risk is because of longevity. So let me just go here. So right here. So this is, by the way, this one's in SharePoint, but it's this idea that when it comes to long-term care, there's different options, right? You probably all remember the Win Wednesday that was sent out. There's a standalone policy. There's also the ability to have it be a combo product. But where I want to hone in on is right here is longevity risk. So remember when Social Security was created back in the 1930s, the average life expectancy back then was 58 for a man and 62 for a woman. So when they made it at age 65, what did they expect for Social Security? If I'm going to pay Social Security at 65 and the average lifespan at that point was 58 and 62, what was the expectations?
They died before they collected.
You're not going to cut anything, right? Women, 62. I got 3 years on you, right? Now people live on Social Security for years and years. On this, the problem with living long is what happens to the human body and mind. It deteriorates, okay? So whether we live really long and our mental capacity leaves us, dementia, Alzheimer's, or we look at the other side and say it's not our mind is strong, our body is weak, right? I might fall, I might bruise, I might have a hard time, creating certain chemicals that are important, like insulin. It could be due to bad health, or it could be due to genetics as well, right? And so because our body and our mind breaks down, it becomes a huge risk. So longevity is a major risk when it comes to retirement. So if you think about it, if you start working at age 25 and you work until age 65, that means you're working for 40 years. You might have 20 to 30 years in your retirement. And so just to give you an idea, a life expectancy chart basically shows as you age, you actually are expected to live even longer, right? So let's say, for example, I live to age 75. As a man, that's almost 10 more years to go. For a female, it's 12. But look at I'll just use this as an example, my grandfather, if he makes it to age 92, statistically, he might go another 3 years, right? So that's just absolutely amazing. The more likely it is that as we age, we're gonna stack on more and more years, right? Because the moment that someone's born in the United States, their life expectancy is at age 0 is 74 for a man and 79 for a female. And as you age, you start stacking on more and more years. Okay. It drops down for a little bit because your 20s can be a little bit volatile, but once you get over a certain age, then it starts just jumping up. Okay. And so when it comes to retirement, if you're talking to anybody over the age of 50, this is an important topic of conversation to have them plan for. All right. That is long-term care.
I don't know if y'all know this, but like carriers can raise the price of long-term care randomly throughout this contract. So like Cody actually told me that when we were selling one, so we were offering like a blend of life insurance and long-term care because of that. So he said like carriers will readjust it randomly throughout. 10 years down the line, they'll raise the premium because the cost of living went higher, and you can't do anything about it. It was a lock in that rate.
Really good example. So long-term care is a form of health insurance from a standpoint that none of your premiums are locked in. And so every single carrier has had to raise rates. So if you hear carriers like, oh, we've never raised rates, they are lying to you. Every carrier has raised rates.
Unless you do the blend of life insurance and you can do the it's like an inflation rider.
Correct. So that's on standalone, right? So standalone long-term care.
No, yes.
When you have the combo products, right? There's life with a long-term care rider, and there's also annuities with long-term care riders, and so those have a little bit more stability, just because it's anchored on life insurance, and all that the long-term care is a rider based on the death benefit.
Is long-term care like a disability where if you have a certain like net worth they won't insure you?
No,
No.
it's actually a little bit of the opposite.
Good.
The more net worth you have, the more likely it is that they want to give it to you.
Okay.
If you don't have a net worth to protect, typically over $500,000, they don't want you to buy the policy. Why would that be?
Because you have to pay the premiums.
Got to be able to pay the premiums, but think about it. So from a standpoint of I get sick and injured and I need long-term care, if I don't have any wealth to cover, what do I qualify for? Medicaid, right? So I qualify for Medicaid assistance. And so if you don't have enough net worth, even if you wanted the policy, can't give it to you. Okay? The other one is the 3 months. So right now the going rate in Houston is about $7,400 a month to be in a nursing facility. So that person has got to have at least 22 grand just to cover those 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it gets pricey. All right, so let's dive in here on the farmer. Okay. Now this one's dairy farmer, but you can translate this into also a rancher, which would be more applicable here in the great state of Texas. Okay. So imagine you sit down with a business owner and they have a dairy cow. Okay. Now, just so you know, typically dairy cows, you're gonna have like 300 head. Okay, and you're gonna be able to milk the cows, sell off the the milk. I was gonna say sell off the butter, but no, you sell off the milk. Someone else makes the butter. You also cows need an insane amount of land in order to eat, and that's all they really do is eat and sleep. And then the other portion though is you have a lot of infrastructure, you have a lot of stuff that's needed to run, and then finally you might take some of your hard-earned revenue and put it aside. So this kind of delves into a little bit on the estate planning side, and so what we use for an example is in this scenario, dairy farmer, rancher, let's use dairy farmer just because it's a little easier here, is one child is a part of the farm, right? They're waking up 4:30 in the morning, they're helping me milk the cows, the husband, the mom and dad. The 3 other kids now live in the city, right? They're attorneys, they're doctors, and mom and dad are like, okay, so we want to be able to give this family, our children, our farm. Because the kids, they worked on it when they were kids, like they helped us, build this bad boy. We didn't do this alone. And so the struggle with this though, is that what do the kids that aren't a part of the farm, what do they actually want? If mom and dad pass away, what do they actually want?
Money.
They want money. Okay, mom and dad love the farm, love the experiences you taught us, working hard, laboring in the summertime heat. But guess what? Don't want the farm. Jimmy, who works with you, he wants the farm. And so this is where life insurance becomes crucial. So think about it from this perspective. And almost every single farmer will tell you, every single rancher, every single dairy farmer will tell you they are not wealthy. Even though they have 500 head of cattle, even though they have hundreds of acres of land, and they have, $1 million or $2 million in the bank, but that's not a lot of money. Don't look at that. And then they have this amazing amount of infrastructure. What happens though, mom and dad die, IRS comes in, says land is worth X, all those cattle are worth Y, infrastructure, all this equipment is worth Z, and all the investments are worth A. And they say all of this net worth is worth $25 million. Well, that's great. So now the kid's got to cough up somewhere close to around $2 to $3 million of estate taxes. Or more, right? So how much can you pass on? Let's go to that actually real quick. How much can I pass on in my estate?
Isn't like 22 point something?
22 point something million. And Jason is absolutely correct here. I'm trying to see what's here. I sent this out. It's inside there. It's basically like 11 million per person can get sent. An unlimited amount, by the way, between husband and wife. Oh, there we go, right here. 12 million right there, okay? The transfer rate, in other words, I love how the IRS like changes these words. I heard the other day they're gonna be able to pull up revenue. I mean, and that's raising of taxes. So transfer rate, which is, by the way, is estate tax, okay? So in other words, husband and wife, this case, this farmer, 25 million is what's worth. He dies, passes on to the wife then dies, she can pass the entire amount on, right? So let's just use this example, 25 million, that $1 million. So that's the coverage. How much is that $1 million gonna get taxed? Do you see how we did that, by the way? You're just taking the estate tax exemption of 12, that's per parent, right? So it's 12 plus 12, it's 24 million can get passed on to the heirs. But then if it's worth 25 minus 24 is 1 million, that million is gonna get taxed at what bracket? 40. Boom. So $400,000, okay? IRS says, hey, write us a check. So in this example is, let's say, for example, let's say mom and dad didn't put money aside in investment. So let's just kind of rewind this a little bit and say they have like $100,000 in there, but then everything else they kind of put into this, right? And they're still running it because most farmers, they keep running the farm, right? Plus Jimmy's here, he's helping out. IRS says, sell the land, kill the cows, sell the equipment, and give us all the money. Some sort of that in order to pay $400,000. How long do you think the IRS will wait for you to go about having the estate sell? What do you think?
9 months.
No time, right? Because what happens the moment that you're late? You pay a nice set of fees, right? Just so you know, by the way, IRS typically charges around 8%, plus a fee, a penalty for being late. Now I know your mom and dad just recently died, but here's our invoice. Okay, so it's all a transaction. So the problem with when you kill a cow, and I'm not a farmer, so help me with this. If I kill a cow, how much milk can I get out of it next season? None. Okay. If I sell land, and let's say right now it's not a good time to sell farmland, how many people do you think are excited to pay full tilt, full bore for my farmland? Nobody, right? They know that I have to still have an estate sale, and here we go, right? So in this scenario, if I have a business, and in this case, it's one that's tangible, that I can't really slaughter off the inventory, but that's really where the most expenses is in the cows and the land. But I don't want to sell that at the wrong time. And also, for mom and dad, the kids, Jimmy's the one that wants the farm. So the moment that I start slaughtering stuff off, whether it's selling land or killing cattle, he has nothing to work with, or less to work with the following season. There are a lot of subsidies for the American farmer, but I would say it's still very difficult from a gross margin perspective for them to do well, okay? So in this scenario, life insurance becomes the greatest tool, because one of the first things that life insurance pays for, it's inside the contract, is what will it pay for if it's owed to someone else. Is the IRS. So who stands in line beneficiary before everybody is back taxes. Okay? So life insurance is crucial here in estate planning because it's cash, and cash is king. Because ultimately, Jimmy wants the entirety of the farm. Those 3 other kids want ultimately cash out of the business. And so if mom and dad are, healthy, simple, folk, they can get themselves a nice life insurance policy. They can get one individually, or they can get what's known as a second to die. So what's a second to die policy? So it's also known as a survivorship. So how does it work?
Basically insuring 2 lives. The 2 named owners or covered people in the policy both have to die before it pays out.
Absolutely. The nice thing on this one is if someone's health is a little bit less, a little bit degraded, if you will, diabetes, history of cancer in the last 5 years, that might be able to still get them a policy because the insurance company, remember, it's best in a group of people. So now when we can insure the life of 2 people, higher likelihood that we might be able to get a policy. So might not write one on the husband and the wife, but we might approve a policy for the 2 of you together. Okay? Just because the likelihood of both of them passing away at the same time is highly unlikely. Okay? And there is strength in numbers. All right. So that is the cow. I wrote this one out, by the way, the language on that, on how to be able to kind of share that story. Again, if you're a storyteller, it's a fun one. This next idea is an annuity. So first, let's go on the concept of what an annuity is. What is an actual annuity? What is it as a product?
It's a source of income.
Okay, so it's an income stream. It's basically I'm putting money aside, and eventually in the future I can tap into it down the road, right? So typically you're going to have some kind of interest on it. If it's fixed, what would that be? If it's a fixed interest rate, what's that going to give us?
Is there like a number of percentage on us?
A specific percentage,
Yeah.
right? Just so you know, fixed annuities right now are paying very little, somewhere close to around 2 to 3%. They might have a first year kicker, an additional percent or 2. But again, fixed income or fixed annuities typically put their investments in bonds, short-term bonds. So there's not a lot of wiggle room there. But what you are doing when you buy, and this goes back to kind of the 101 of annuities, is there is the accumulation, right? And when you put money in, you're buying mortality credits, right? So what would be an example of a mortality credit? What do you guys think? Okay, so I'll show you what it is. So mortality credits are the likelihood of death in a particular year. Now, specifically in 2022. Okay, so Jason sells somebody a fixed annuity. That woman or man is buying mortality credits of 2022. What happens in the future expected for mortality in the United States? I'd say more so the United States.
Longevities will be increasing.
That is the anticipation, right? That longevity could increase. So what happens here is when you buy mortality credits of 2022, I might be able to, if longevity goes out further into the future, I would actually get more money for the money I put in today versus the money, same amount of money that I put in into the future, because the expectancy is that I'll live longer, right? So from an annuity perspective, basic 101 is I put money in, it has an accumulation phase, and then at annuitization. So basically I'm telling the insurance company, slide me off a paycheck, right? Give me money for life, right? Give me that pension of my money, okay? Now that pensionization or annuitization is the term, is based on how many mortality credits you have. So in this particular case, the more that I have, because I'm gonna buy more in the future, because if mortality credits go bigger, then what happens is, in the future, if I use the annuity in the future, I'm gonna have less, okay? So think of it from this perspective of, if I have $1 million and I have 1,000 mortality credits, what's 1 million divided by 1,000? 10,000, okay? So in that scenario, I got 10,000. Now if I still have,
Oh, I'm sorry, million divided by 1,000?
yeah,
It's 1,000.
1,000. So what happens here is, let's say in the future, let's say in 10 years, when somebody decides I want the fixed annuity, I don't get 1,000 mortality credits because people are living longer. Let's just use this example. I get 2,000. It's not that rapid, but let's just use it as an example. So I still have 1 million. Now I take the 1 million and divide it by 2, because I delayed my buying of that annuity. My mortality credits are no longer 1,000 in the life expectancies of 2022, the life expectancies of a decade down the road, not following a global pandemic, right? So what's 1 million divided by 2,000?
Half of 1,000.
Half of 1,000, now it's 500. So that's what happens in annuitization. There's value in buying that fixed annuity now versus down the road because of the amount of mortality credits. Now, just so you're aware, what's the limit of life insurance a company will sell? So National Life selling life insurance, New York Life selling life insurance, what's the limit?
For anybody or based on an individual?
Based on the company.
Oh.
There is no limit, folks. You can sell life insurance till the cows come home. They will not shut it off. Now, there's certain programs they might shut off, right? When it comes to annuities, fixed income, there is a limit because there's liability. To a certain extent, it's not proven, right? But to a certain extent, I don't know if, let's say everybody lives age 120, that's my liability, okay? MetLife sold off their individual life insurance. That was a design due to poor annuity sales. Anticipated was that they would sell about 18 billion. They sold 34 billion. On that, a lot of it was guaranteed at a 6% compound interest rate, guaranteed on your income, okay? They sold, you're the largest life insurer in the world, and they sold to Mass Mutual. They made it sound like they did it over a couple of weeks. That was years in the working. So, because the way annuities are structured is that, so just think of it the basic, fixed, because that's the simplest one to understand, is you have deferred income annuity. So what does deferred sound like?
You have to wait.
I have to wait.
Yeah.
So it could be an arbitrary number. It could be like, hey, John buys one and says, hey, I'm not gonna tap into this income for 10 years. Okay, that's deferred. What's a single premium immediate annuity sound like?
Start letting the income.
Okay, single premium means what? One time, right? And then what does immediate sound like?
Within 13 months.
Within 13 months, okay? That's what's considered a SPIA. So what that is doing is you're putting money aside and you're giving it to the insurance company, and it's kind of the exact opposite of life insurance. Life insurance, to a morbid expectation, is I pay a premium, and if I die, you pay out. So in order for me to kind of win in this bet is, I gotta die, right? On the exact opposite, from an annuity perspective, I wanna live as long as humanly possible, because you're gonna keep paying that dollar out to me every year I keep living. Okay, so they're in the exact opposite. So it's very few do you ever run into a life insurance company that doesn't offer annuities, because they're on the exact opposite sides of that actuarial table. Living too long, living too short, okay? So that's why there's a limit on how many fixed annuities they can sell. It's because there's only so many mortality credits from a risk perspective that can balance out from a life perspective. Okay, so in the life insurance side, in the annuity side, this is not an argument about rate of return, although that's where almost everybody likes to go to. I have a white paper that was done by the CFA. I didn't attach it in here because it's like 200 pages. But what they looked at was when you put up someone's retirement into an annuity, income for life annuity, okay? It reduces that volatility in the bond portfolio, that when you have about 20 to 30%, it takes their likelihood of success from sometimes 60 to 70% to 90 to 99%. Likelihood of the successful retirement, not outliving your income. Very, very powerful. So a lot of times when you're having conversations with the wealth manager, you can ask him or her, how many people are you helping with their retirement money that they're going to tap into in the next 5 to 10 years? If they're dealing with a bunch of people that aren't going to tap into the retirement money anytime soon, no value in bringing up the conversation. But if they say, yeah, a majority of my clients are going to retire in the next 5 years, well, what's their stance on that bond portfolio? How are they going to manage it as the Fed continues to hike up interest rates? Bond prices fall, just so you know the way that they're somewhat inverse in relationship. Interest rates go up, bond prices fall. So in that scenario, what if we were to take a sliver of their assets and create a stream of income? Because there's a certain lifestyle number that everybody has, property taxes, groceries, I wouldn't say the country club because then they might let that go at some point in retirement, but there's certain fees or expenses, lifestyle, that is there. Might be $5,000, might be $3,000, might be $12,000 bucks a month. But what you can do is you can create that stream of income, and then what the investment guy can now do, or gal, is they can then focus on just growing assets. They don't need to worry about peeling money off of this portfolio to constantly give to the client. Plus, what happens in a world where I have a down market like we do right now? What happens to my account? It's down, and let's say you need to pull money out of it. That's like kicking the dog while it's down, right? So now not only have you pulled money out, you're also doing it at the worst time. You've literally bought it high and you're selling it low. You're doing the exact opposite of what you should do in investments. So by being able to partner with a wealth manager that can understand how annuities play a role. So you guys might not be familiar with this, but it's a financial tool called Monte Carlo. Are you guys familiar with this? A Monte Carlo simulation. John's nodding his head. Okay, so what it is, it's a software simulator that will pull over 1,000 iterations. Now, the way it's been modified for the financial services world is it'll pull 1,000 different iterations on a rate of return modeling when you have some certain things that are fixed. So typically what you're putting in fixed is, I have a certain amount of money, I have a certain amount of cash flow, and then run a variety of different scenarios for me in regards to that rate of return. And it'll give you a percentage of likelihood of not outliving your money. Most of these modeling, by the way, when you run it for people, 60 to 70% of the time, will run out of money. Okay? So I'll just give you an example. So let's say you have a flight to take here to London. The likelihood of you getting there is like 60%. So there's 40% chance that you could die. How likely it is that you're going to take that flight?
100%.
You'll take it, no problem.
At 40% death?
Wow, wait a minute.
I fly all the time.
No, he's
No.
if
If
Oh, if I knew that?
If your
Yeah.
likelihood of death is 40%.
You're bold, man.
yeah,
I mean, if Liverpool was playing the Champions League
take a
final in
ship.
London, I'd do it.
There's reasons he'll take it.
Yeah.
British.
Now let's say the other airline, 95% chance that you're gonna get there. Which one do you take?
So I was flying Spirit the first time.
Flight Spirit. Okay. Plus they're gonna charge you for that comment. So in this scenario, you can actually, and then this is the proof. When you can take someone's portfolio, put about 20 to 30% in a fixed annuity strategy, their likelihood of success in retirement can jump to about 99%, almost 100% likelihood of success. Where the exact opposite. So again, it's the exact same scenario, right? Where it's 70% in stocks, 30% in bonds. It's about 70 to 60%.
And success is defined as the probability of not outliving your money
Correct.
on that baseline, which makes it kind of a different play. So there's a place for annuities in high net worth, but it's a different play.
Correct.
They're not worried about that baseline. They're worried about other considerations like legacy
Bingo.
versus down market.
Yep.
Not wanting to. They also don't want to tap that down market. The investment account in a down market, but for other reasons, not for survival reasons.
Absolutely. So that in that scenario, right, that you put fixed, you can say a certain age that you want to live to, a certain legacy number that you want to have at the end for quote unquote that success. So that is your income for life. So on this, I talked to you about. So you guys are familiar with the name of John Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about John Rockefeller?
Very wealthy.
How is he wealthy? What did he do?
Still, wasn't
What was it?
Oh, that's right.
That's Carnegie.
Yeah,
Standard Oil.
Standard Oil. Okay, so he was the man that saw the opportunity to basically standardize the oil refinery process and made a killing. Then they found out that it was a monopoly. I don't know if they found it out as much as the guy just dominated the marketplace. He even made even more money when they made him sell it all off in parts. But one of the great things that he did for the family was he set up generational wealth. Okay, so one of the ways that you can do this in a very small concept, okay, is so let's say, for example, does any of you have a grandparent that gives you a little bit of money on your birthday? And if so, what do they give you? Or on Christmas?
Sure.
Do you have that? How much do they give you?
like $50.
$50, okay?
Yeah.
So imagine that they decide to do this. So I got $50,000 just sitting in the bank. It's a CD earning me 0.5%, or it's my money market, right? Getting me 0.3%. And they want to leave that as a legacy to the grandkid, okay? They can take that